I'm your host, Brian Wells, and I'm a fourth-generation homesteader. Since 2008, my family and I have been homesteading here in beautiful upstate New York. In 2019, I launched the Homestead Journey podcast to help people just like you get started and find success on their journey towards self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and sustainability. This is the Homestead Journey, and this is Season 4. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Homestead Journey podcast. My name is Brian Wells. I am coming to you from 3B Farm and Homestead here in beautiful upstate New York, and this is episode number 156 of the Homestead Journey podcast. And as I record this, today is Mother's Day. So first of all, let me start out by wishing all of the mothers who listen to this podcast, let me wish you all a very happy Mother's Day. I had the opportunity, the privilege, the blessing today to spend time with my mom and, of course, with Bonnie. And I don't take that lightly. There were many, many years where, because of where we were located geographically, I was unable to spend time with my mother on Mother's Day. And so certainly it is a blessing to be able to do that. Actually, yesterday evening, we went out for dinner. And then today we had dinner at my mom and dad's homestead, the Humming Bee Homestead. And it was just a wonderful time. My dad and I and Brian J., we cooked. So far, nobody has fallen ill. So we'll take that as a win. But again, just a great opportunity, a blessing to be able to spend time with them. And actually just thinking about some things that my mom taught me over the years. Yes, Mom, I did pay attention. Maybe you didn't think I was at the time, but I did pay attention. And that actually is a little bit of the background for what we're going to be talking about as the main topic today on the Charting the Course segment. And really it all boils down to be kind, be nice. And sometimes in the homesteading sphere, I see people being really, really nasty to each other. And so today, in honor of Mother's Day, and in particular in honor of my mom, I'm going to just maybe remind you of some things. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because I know that the people who listen to my podcast are not nasty people, okay? No nasty people listen to this podcast. No, I think all of us, though, we do need a reminder every once in a while to be nice. And so anyhow, we're going to talk about that. But before we do, let's jump on over to this week's Homestead Happenings because, folks, man, it was a busy week, both on and off the homestead, and I am so excited to share with you what we've got going on here on 3B Farm and Homestead. So buckle up and let's jump on over to this week's Homestead Happenings. Well, certainly it was a busy week here. Lots of stuff going on, particularly around the garden. And when I talk around the garden, I mean that both figuratively and literally. So I spent quite a bit of time this week moving wood chips. I really put aside planting garden because the raised beds had just really gotten a lot of weeds around them. And so I think I mentioned last week that I had weed whacked that down to bare earth. And this week I just moved up load after load after load of wood chips. And then I've got that all leveled out and I've got the fence up now around the raised beds and it just looks so much nicer. And I'm just getting excited to be able to get out there and get things planted. I actually didn't get anything more planted this weekend just because of the whole laundry list of other things that I ended up doing here on the homestead. But I do feel like I've set myself up for success up there. And so hopefully it will look nicer. So if it looks nicer, I'm going to want to spend more time up there. That's at least that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I also spent some time in the Ruth Stout bed. I had shared with you that we had used some pigs to till the land and then I had leveled it out and this week I got some mulch hay and got that spread out. So that's all ready for us to plant. So just a lot of planning ahead of us here in the near future. But I'm also glad that I resisted the urge to put out anything that was tender or to plant things that might be frost sensitive, because we have had up here what some people might refer to as fake spring, other people might refer to as false spring, and some people might refer to it as fool's spring. Because what happens is we get these nice, beautiful days of 70 degrees, even up into the 80s, and things are starting to green up and people are thinking, okay, great, let me get out there and let me get stuff planted in the garden. But no, folks. It's I don't want to say way too early for that, because tomorrow is going to be May 15th. May 15th is really our last average frost date in my area. And you might remember on episode 154, I talked about how your USDA hardiness zone doesn't matter. What's important is knowing your last average frost date. And so for us, our last average frost date is the 15th of May. But looking ahead in the forecast, on Wednesday, it is supposed to get down to 33 degrees, which means until that is passed, I certainly don't want to put out anything that is going to be frost sensitive. And in fact, what I'm doing right now, I'm in the process of hardening off my plants. And so I won't be planting anything that's frost sensitive until after the Southern Adirondack Homesteading Festival, just to be on the safe side, but also because it's going to be a busy week getting ready for that. So why put myself under any other pressure where we might end up having to cover raised beds and stuff like that? No, I'm just going to wait until next week when hopefully the threat of frost is past. As I said, I have started hardening off my vegetables. I actually had not gotten around to thinning things out, a little bit late to the game on that. So what I decided to try doing this year with my tomatoes that I thinned out is just trying to put them in some soil and seeing if I can get them to root. Now, tomatoes are something that really do well with that. If you've ever looked at a tomato plant, you'll see all of these little hairs on the side of the tomato plants. And what happens with those is, if the conditions are right, those will actually turn into roots, which is why it's really recommended that you plant tomato plants deep, because those little hairs are going to develop a nice, healthy root system, which will feed your tomato plant and will help it produce even a more abundant harvest. And so I'm just rolling the dice. I would normally throw those things out, so I just took another tray, filled up some cups with some potting soil, popped those down in there, and we'll see what we get. But it's always an experiment, and it's always fun to try those things out. This week, I also got the farm truck running again. That's the good news. Well, I guess the good news is also the thing that was wrong with it is that the MAP sensor, don't ask me what MAP stands for. I think it's manifold air pressure sensor, but don't hold me to that. But that is the reason why my truck was running really rough, and it was running really rich, and it was backfiring out the intake. And so I swapped that out. It was like a $50 part. And boy, I'm back in business, got power, took it for a drive around the block, really happy about it. Get home, and the thing was smoking like a 4th of July barbecue grill. Said, what in the world's going on? Well, when I had it up to my buddy's place, my buddy Mark, who you might remember from my episode, he and my buddy Chad were the ones that I talked through what I should buy with regards to a farm truck. And he took a look at it while it was running rough, and he said, Brian, it looks like you've got a leaky rear main seal. Now, the rear main seal is the seal between the engine and the transmission. And, well, it seems like it's more than just a leaky rear main seal. It's like a gushy rear main seal. So that is not a job that I'm going to tackle. I just don't have the equipment for it. And so I'm going to have to take it to my mechanic and have them do it. No idea what it's going to run me. But that's the joy of an old farm truck, right? I bought the truck so I could work on it, and maybe I should just suck it up, Buttercup, and do the work myself, but it's just the wrong time of the year for me to tackle a project like that. Again, I really don't have the equipment for it, transmission stands, I don't have a lift, so it would be a pain in the neck to do it, and it would be kind of dangerous for me to do it. So I'm going to take it to a professional, have a professional do it for me, and then we'll see what other gremlins we find. But anyhow, at least the farm truck is running again, and I am very, very happy about that. But very, very sad that I'm going to have to sink some money into a rear main seal. Last thing I wanted to share with you is that this week I got a battery-powered chainsaw. Now, you might remember back on an episode, it was several years ago, don't remember exactly what episode number it was. I was not thrilled with the idea of battery-powered lawn tools. And to be frank, I still am not convinced that they are a good fit, especially from a government mandate perspective. I think for Joe Blow, a homeowner who might be cutting down a tree every once in a while, a battery-powered chainsaw might be a good thing. In fact, that's the reason why I got that, because with a gas-powered chainsaw, they sit around, the carbs gunk up, and they're a bit of a pain in the butt. But when I think about arborists, or I think about people who do landscaping for a living, I'm still not convinced that batteries are at the spot to where you can charge them quickly enough without having to have tons and tons of batteries or very expensive batteries that are going to hold the charge for a while. So still not convinced that for that application, the technology is there. I might be wrong, been wrong before. I'll be wrong again in the future. But for me, Joe Blow homeowner, who is going to use a chainsaw every once in a great while, I think a battery-powered chainsaw and maybe a battery-powered weed whacker, they're gonna make sense, and they're starting to get into that spot from a financial perspective where they made sense. I went ahead and got a DeWalt because I already live in the DeWalt land. I have a bunch of DeWalt battery-powered drills and saws and things of that nature, and this uses the same battery type. So it's a 20-volt battery. It's in that same family, and so it just made sense for me to stay in that area. And the DeWalt chainsaw does have very, very good reviews. And I can tell you, having used it this weekend to cut down a tree and to cut up a tree, it works very, very well. Now, I did go ahead and buy the chainsaw with the 5 amp hour battery. And the reason why I did that is because the other batteries that I have are 2 amp hour batteries, and I felt like I would have to be swapping those out a lot. Even though they technically will work with the saw, it's just not going to give you the number of cuts that I might want, even the little bit that I'm going to use it. So I did get the 5 amp hour battery. So glad I did. It worked like a champ. I dropped, I don't know, it's probably, it was probably a 10 to 12 inch in diameter tree. So we're not talking a giant sequoia, but it was still larger than a sapling. And with a 12-inch bar, I was able to drop that tree and drop it exactly where I wanted it. So I was very, very pleased with myself, and I was also very pleased with the performance of the chainsaw. Now, of course, it wouldn't be me running a chainsaw without getting the bar stuck in the tree. I was going to cut up some of the limbs, and it shifted, and of course now the bar's pinched, and so I had to go get my reciprocating saw, my Sawzall, and cut out the chainsaw, because that's just how I roll. Every time I use a chainsaw, I always pinch the bar. Yeah, so I guess I gotta, I mean, that's why I don't have a beard and I don't wear flannel. I'm not a lumberjack. But anyhow, I was overall very, very happy with that saw, and we'll see how it continues to work for me in the future. have a few other saplings that need to come down around the property. And so once I get the garden in, probably start doing some tidying up. But again, very happy with it. So all of that to say, folks, very busy week here on the homestead. A lot of good stuff going on. And I'm just looking forward, as we look forward to garden season 2023 really ramping up. Just trying to remind myself, Brian, it's been Fool Spring. It's been Fool Spring. It's been Fool Spring. You're not as far behind as what you feel. And even if you are, it is what it is. We'll get planted what we get planted. We'll harvest what we can harvest. And we'll just have to be okay doing the best we can with what we've got to work with. So that's what's been going on here on 3B Farm and Homestead. I hope things are well wherever you are at. Before we jump on over to this week's Charting the Course, I did want to let you know a little bit about this coming weekend. So this coming weekend, May 19th, 20th, and 21st, is going to be the Southern Adirondack Homesteading Festival here in beautiful upstate New York. And if you live in this area and you are interested, we do have weekend passes still available. We have day passes still available. If you're interested at all in checking that out, head on over to thehomesteadjourney.net/festival. You'll be able to see the list of speakers, the time frames, and also to be able to buy tickets there if you are interested in attending. But what I'm also going to be doing, hopefully fingers crossed, I'm going to be able to pull this off, is I am planning on going live both Saturday, so that'll be May 20th, and then on Sunday, May 21st at noon Eastern Time. And I have set up an event on Facebook, so if you are interested, I'm going to be streaming it live on Facebook. Now, I would love to try to stream it live to Facebook and to YouTube. I just don't think the computer I have is going to be able to handle that. I also am not 100% sure that the bandwidth I'm going to have to work with would support that. So this year, just trying to keep things simple. We're just going to go live on Facebook for sure. Well, when I say for sure, fingers crossed that I can get everything all set up and working the way, but I'm planning on going live on Saturday and on Sunday from noon Eastern until 1 o'clock. I'm also hoping to maybe throw in a few other lives just kind of on the fly as we go throughout the weekend. So maybe Friday night, I might be able to pull it off. Maybe Saturday night. We'll just have to see how things go. I'm hoping to also get some interviews while I'm there for future episodes. And I am also going to take both of those lives, and I am planning on turning those into future episodes as well. So if you miss the lives, or you don't like Facebook, or you're not on Facebook, don't worry, you're not going to miss out. Those will be future episodes, probably edited, but those will be available in the future. So if you can't make it to the lives, certainly don't panic. They'll be available in the future. I'm also, fingers crossed, hoping to record both of my talks that I'll be giving. I'm going to be giving a keynote on what is homesteading and why does it matter. And then I'm also going to be talking about chickens. And so I'm hopeful that I'll be able to record both of those, and those will become future episodes or content here on the podcast. But all of that to say, my guess is that next week, after a busy weekend, I'd love to say there's going to be an episode, or the episode might be a day late. My guess is there's not going to be an episode next week. My guess is I'm just going to be so beat. I'm going to come home, I'm going to collapse on the couch, and that's going to be all she wrote. So if there's an episode, there's an episode. If there's not, there's not. Please bear with me. Please have patience. But certainly, there will be the lives available just in case you have to have that Homestead Journey podcast fix. All right. All of that said, let's jump on over to this week's Charting the Course, and let's talk about being kind one to another. Here we go. So as I was scrolling through some of the homesteading groups on Facebook, and to be frank, I don't do that much anymore. I was struck by the number of times where people would post something along the lines of, I have a question, please be kind, or I have a question, please don't judge me. And I thought how sad it is that people cannot come to a forum, a Facebook group, where there is a lot of knowledge that they can draw from, and yet they cannot do it in a way where they're not afraid of being ridiculed and made fun of and people just being jerks. To me, that's so sad because a big part of homesteading is community. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't have the physical community that I've been blessed to have. They don't have a mom and dad that support them. They don't have family that they grew up in who have been willing to pass on the knowledge and the skills. They don't have the network of friends that have been willing to show them how to castrate pigs like my buddy Jack Rowland showed me. They just don't have that community. And so they come into these Facebook groups looking for that. And unfortunately, a lot of times what they find is they find vitriol, they find meanness, they find unkindness. And today, in the spirit of Mother's Day, and in the spirit of saying, hey, Mom, I did hear what you were saying when I was growing up. I haven't always put it into practice, but I did hear what you were saying. Let's just talk about a few things. So the first thing I want us to remember is that their journey is not our journey. When you look at what somebody's wanting to do on their homestead, and maybe they're desiring to go off grid, and you're like, that's crazy. Or maybe they're not going to go off grid, and you think they should go off grid. Whatever it is, just keep in mind that their journey is not our journey. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine today at church, and we were talking more in the context of what it means to be a farm. Now, they have a homestead. In fact, they've bought some pigs from me, and they're going to be getting a family milk cow this week, and they have meat birds right now out on pasture. They're doing the things, and they're learning skills, and they're trying to pass those skills on and share those skills with other people as they've been learning things. And she was telling me how when she talks to people, she always feels like she has to qualify what their farm is, because so many people think that unless you have 800 cows or 1,000 cows that you're milking, you're not a real farm. And in fact, both she and her husband grew up on, I believe, on dairy farms or around dairy farms like that. And so even they have a hard time wrapping their heads around that what they're doing really is farming. And they don't need to qualify it. They don't need to make excuses for the reason why they do the things that they do, because their journey is not anybody else's journey. Now, they're getting a family milk cow this week. Guess who has no desire to have a family milk cow? This guy right here. Yeah, me. I have no desire to have a family milk cow. Now, I'm not saying that I will never have a family milk cow, but right now, that's not part of my journey. I don't think it will ever be a part of my journey. I'm excited for them, but that's not my journey. That's their journey. And so I'm going to cheer them on. I'm not going to say you're crazy for getting a family milk cow, and do you realize how much this is going to tie you down and how much it work? No, why would I do that? I'm going to encourage them because that's their journey. It's not my journey. And so when you see people going a route that's different than you, or they're doing things differently than what you would do them, just keep in mind that they're on a different path, or maybe they're on a different step of the same path, but it doesn't matter. Your journey is not their journey, and their journey is not your journey. The second thing I would say is your self-sufficiency is different than their self-sufficiency. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, as you might remember, way back in the day, as I was talking about what it means to homestead, and in fact, if you look at this logo right here, those three S's, which look like a path, signifying a journey, but it's three S's: self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and sustainability. Now, you might remember I talked about self-sufficiency, meaning stuff, the things that we can raise, grow, produce, and or process on our homestead. Self-reliance speaks to skills. Do I have the skills necessary to raise, grow, produce, and or process the stuff that I need? And sustainability speaks to systems. Do I have systems in place whereby, with minimal to no off-farm or off-homestead inputs, I can apply my skills to raise, grow, produce, and or process the stuff that I need? Well, the stuff that you need and the stuff that I need are probably going to be two totally different sets of stuff. The things that are important to you may be different than what's important to me. Going back to my friends, they're getting a family milk cow. For them, having their own dairy is important. So what's self-sufficiency to them is different than what is self-sufficiency to me. And that's okay. What's important to you is probably going to be different than what's important to me. And what's important to me might be different than what's important to you. And you know what? It might change over time. As you know, I'm in the process of getting out of pigs. Why am I getting out of pigs? Well, I'm getting out of pigs in part because we have been transitioning to the Mediterranean diet and we don't need the pork. So why raise pigs? I don't need to raise pigs to be a homesteader, right? That part of self-sufficiency is no longer a part of my journey. And you're going to have those ebbs and flows. And it's all good. So when you see somebody generating or attempting to generate something that maybe you think is foolish, so what? What's important to them is different than what's important to you. And maybe you look at somebody and you say, well, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you growing this? And why aren't you generating this? Maybe it's not important to them. Or again, going back to what I said before, maybe they're on a different step on their journey. And it's okay. Their self-sufficiency is different than your self-sufficiency. Your self-sufficiency is different than their self-sufficiency. What they need and want is probably different than what you need and or want, and it's all good. The third thing I would say is this: you don't know it all. You don't know it all. And what you do know, keep in mind this: what you do know, at one point in your life, you didn't know. At one point in your life, somebody shared with you the knowledge that you now currently have. Now, maybe you've learned it through the School of Hard Knocks, okay? But even learning it through the School of Hard Knocks means that at one point in time, you didn't know what you know now. And the other thing is, folks, there's more to learn. You're never going to know everything. And I see so many times on the homesteading groups, people who think that either A, they know it all, or B, they have no desire to help other people. All they want to do is just stand and mock and be like, well, I learned it through the School of Hard Knocks, so you need to learn the hard lesson. Why be that way? Why be that way? If you're further on down the road than somebody else, pass on what you've been given. Pass on what you've been blessed with. Pay it forward. You know, my buddy Jack Rowland, he came here one day and he showed me how to castrate pigs. And I had some friends that bought some pigs from me later on who then their sow farrowed, and so they had some piglets. And so now it was a matter of they needed to learn how to castrate pigs. Now, I could have been a jerk and be like, watch YouTube videos. Or I will figure it out. Why would I do that? Jack was kind enough to show me how. So, you know what I did? I went up to my buddy's house and I showed him how to do it. It's not the most pleasant thing in the world to do. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it, just to be frank. I shouldn't say a lot of different ways, but there's several different ways that you can do it. But I went up there and I showed him. Passed it on. I paid it forward. Because there was one point in time in my life when I didn't know how to castrate pigs. Quite honestly, It's a skill I'd rather not know. I don't think there's anybody that enjoys that process. If you do, you're a sick, twisted son of a gun. But no, it's something that I learned, and so I passed it on. I'm just simply saying that as we learn skills, we acquire knowledge, help somebody else along the way. And just understand that you don't know it all. You're never going to know it all. And if you think you know it all, you're a fool. There's always something else to learn. It's a new way to learn. And you know what? Sometimes folks are going to do things differently than you do. They may not necessarily buy into the same philosophies that you do. They may go down a different road than you're going down. God bless them. You know what? It might work. You know what? It might not work. And if it doesn't work, don't be a jerk about it. I told you to do it. Why? Why be that way? Just try to help them learn from their mistakes. Encourage them to get back up, to try it again, to keep on going. And the other thing is this. Sometimes you run across stuff, and folks, this is a growing edge for me. I'll just be honest with you. But you don't have to jump into everything. Sometimes there are people who post things that they're just seeking attention. Scroll on by. There are other people who maybe they've got an opinion about a topic that's different than yours. Sometimes it's best just to scroll on by. Other times, maybe there's an opportunity to have a dialogue with somebody to try to understand why they have that perspective. But if you start seeing things go off the rails, just let it be. Keep in mind, homesteading is not a competition. There's not any prize for world's best homesteader. It's not a race. Not like who can get there bigger, faster, etc. No. It's just a way of living where hopefully today I'm a little bit more self-sufficient, self-reliant, and sustainable than I was yesterday. And what other people think, and what other people say, and what other people are doing, does it really matter? If I'm finding joy and I'm generating the things that I need and I want, and if my soul is filled and my soul is fed, does anything else really matter? I don't think so. But what do you think? Reach out to me, Brian at thehomesteadjourney.net. I would love to hear from you. You can also find us on all of the socials. Links are in the show notes. Folks, it's going to be a busy week here on the homestead. I'm looking forward to the Southern Adirondack Homesteading Festival. If you are up here in the Great Northeast and you've got next weekend free, I'd love to meet you in person. But if not, don't forget, we'll be going live. And so you're going to be able to hear from some of the attendees, some of the speakers. If this all works out well, I think it's going to be a good time. So if you can't make it in person, show up for the lives and see what's going on here in beautiful upstate New York. Until next time, everybody, as always, keep up the good work.